Okay, let's solve some systems of equations using the elimination method. Okay, so here we have our first system of equations. We're going to get rid of these using the elimination method. To use the elimination method, basically we just add these two equations together going from top to bottom. We do this to get rid of one of the variables, in this case the variable y. So what you get if you add these two equations going from top to bottom, you get 2x plus 7x, that gives us 9x. You see why we do this? We get rid of the y variable here because plus 5 minus 5 gives us 0. So we could say that's plus 0y equals 25, and 20 gives us 45. Okay, we know anything multiplied by 0 equals 0. So what we're left with is 9x equals 45. X equals 45 over 9. X equals 5. Okay, now that we know what x is, we're going to plug this number x back into either one of these equations, either here or here, and then solve for y. What that looks like is we'll use this top one here. So we're going to say 2 times 5 plus 5y equals 25. 10 plus 5y equals 25. 5y equals 25 minus 10. 5y equals 15. Y equals 15 over 5. Therefore, y equals 3. So these two answers, what we get for x, what we get for y, these are our answers to both of these equations. So we go ahead and say that the answer equals 5, 3. Okay, now if I plug in the number 5 here and the number 3 here, it'll ring true for the top equation, also for the bottom equation. Sometimes what you could do, if you like, you could go back and work these problems through after you've already figured out the answer, just to double check. So what we have is 2 times 5 plus 5 times 3. We're hoping that equals 25. So we get 10 plus 15 equals 25. Sure enough. So when we plug in these numbers back into the top equation here, we just plug these numbers back in. Sure enough, we get the same answer that we have up here. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the bottom equation just to double check, just to make sure we did it all right. So we have 7 times 5 minus 5 times 3. Does that equal 20? 7 times 5 we know is 35 minus 15. Does that equal 20? 35 minus 15, yes, that does equal 20. So we know we got it right. Okay, our second system of equations, 10x plus 10y equals 110, and 12x minus 10y equals 0. Okay, it's the same kind of idea. We could see here that the numbers 10y and negative 10y can eliminate once we add these two together. So we're going to eliminate our y variable first. To do that, we simply add the top row to the bottom row. So 10x plus 12x, that gives us 22x. 10y minus 10y gives us 0y. And 110 plus 0 equals 110. Well, we know 0 times anything is 0, so we just eliminate our y variable. What's left is 22x equals 110. So x equals 110 over 22. X equals 5. Okay, once we've figured out one of these variables, in this case we figured out the variable x, we could go ahead and plug it back in either here, or we could plug it in here and then solve for y. Let's plug it into the top formula. So we have 10 times 5 plus 10y equals 110. 50 plus 10y equals 110. 10y equals 110 minus 50 So we could say 10y equals 60, y equals 60 over 10, y equals 6. So here we have our variable solved for y and our variable x solved. We have that as equal to 5. Okay, here's our solution written out. We're going to go ahead and plug these numbers back into one of these equations and see what we get as a result. So let's use equation number 2, the 12x minus 10y equals 0. So we plug in 5 for x, which means we have 12 times 5 minus 10. Well, y we know is 6. What does that equal? 12 times 5, we know that's 60. And 10 times 6 is 60. 60 minus 60 equals 0. Well, sure enough, that's just the exact same as we have here, so we know that equation checks out. Okay, let's go ahead and place these back into the top equation, here and here. So 10 times 5 plus 10 times 6, what does that equal? 10 times 5 is 50. 10 times 6 is 60. 50 plus 60 is 110. So we see that this answer checks out over here. So this is a way to go back through once you've already solved for your system of equations. Just a way to double check your work to make sure you get it right. Is to simply drop these back in to one of the equations and see if you get the same result. Okay, so for our next system of equations, we're going to do by elimination method. Well, we see that we can't really get rid of this y so easily, or the x. If we add these two together, it's not going to zero it out down here. So we kind of have to think to ourselves, what can we do to manipulate these equations to where once I add them together, there'll be a 0 here. Well, we could see that if we take this second row and we multiply by 2, that'll give us a negative 6. 6 plus negative 6 will equal 0. So that's one idea we could do. We could say R2 times 2. Another way to do it is to see that row 1, maybe we could divide row 1 by 2. If you divide row 1 by 2, you could see in your mind that that will be a 3y. And then 3y minus 3y, that'll zero it out here. So another method we could do is we could say R1 divided by 2. Okay, now I think the easiest one to do would just be to divide row 1 by 2. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say row 1 divided by 2 equals the new row 1. What we get when we divide row 1 by 2, well, 4x divided by 2, that gives us 2x. 6y divided by 2 gives us 3y. And 14 divided by 2 gives us 7. So here all we did is we just divided this row 1 by 2, and this is what we got. Now with systems of equations like this, you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to just multiply or divide through with a number. X and Y are still going to be the same, whether you multiply or divide or just leave it alone. So really we're not doing anything here. We're changing the numbers, but we're not changing the values for x and y. It's still going to remain the same, and you'll see what I mean here. So we just manipulated row 1. Now we're going to do the elimination method here with row 2. So maybe I could move row 2 here, and then you can see now I could add these two rows together. Okay, let's do that. 2x minus 10x gives us negative 8x. 3y minus 3y equals 0y. And 7 plus 25 gives us 32. Anything times 0 is 0. We could cancel that out. What we're left with is negative 8x equals 32. X equals 32 over negative 8. X equals negative 4. In this case, it'd be easiest just to plug it into the first row, or the first equation. So what we get is 2 times negative 4 plus 3y equals 7. Negative 8 plus 3y equals 7. 3y equals 7 plus 8. 3y equals 15. Y equals 15 over 3. So y equals 5. So here we have -4 and 5 as our answers. What I'm going to do to show you why this little trick was allowed by being able to divide the row by 2 is we're going to go ahead and plug this into the original equation before we divided by 2 and with the new equation where we did divide by 2, and you're going to see that it works out. It works out for both equations before and after we adjusted. Okay, here we have our original problem. Here's the adjustment that we made to row 1. Here's our answers that we got. Let's plug in these answers to these equations, see if they ring true. And then we're going to go ahead and plug it into the adjustment that we made, this equation here, to see if this also rings true. Okay, here we go here. This first equation. So 4 times -4 plus 6 times 5. We know 4 times -4, that gives us -16. 6 times 5 gives us 30. 30 minus 16, definitely that's 14. So we can see that checks out. Okay, let's go ahead and try this one here. Let's plug it into this equation. So we get -10 times -4 minus 3 times 5. -10 times -4 gives us a positive 40. 3 times 5 gives us 15. 40 minus 15, that equals 25. So we see that checks out. Okay, last one. Let's go ahead and plug those numbers that we got, our answers. Let's plug it into the adjustment. Remember, this is the adjustment that we made. We divided R1 by 2. The reason why we did that, if you guys recall, is so that when we add these two together, we could zero them out. So what we're left with is 2 times -4 plus 3 times 5. What does that equal? Well, 2 times -4, that gives us -8. 3 times 5, that gives us 15. So -8 plus 15 is the same as saying 15 minus 8. We both know that that's 7. So you can see that checks out. Okay, I hope this comes in handy to you guys. I hope you learned something. This is your basic beginning algebra. This is beginning algebra, solving systems of linear equations using the elimination method. Please like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions, leave it in a comment below. And thank you for your time.